Hello students, topic of today's lecture is Auger electron spectroscopy. Auger electron spectroscopy is a electron beam technique for characterizing the solid surfaces. Particularly here we are interested in the semiconductor surfaces. So in the beginning, first we will review E-beam techniques and then we will start discussions about the Auger electron spectroscopy. So you know that in case of E-beam techniques, we can characterize the semiconductor material or any solid surface by following the electron beam on the target sample material. So there are many possibilities and each possibility give rise to one set of characterization techniques. For example, if we talk about the reflected electron sample, then we have scanning electron microscope, low energy electron diffraction, high energy electron diffraction and voltage contrast. All these characterization techniques are very useful for finding out the information about the target material. So if we consider the electrons which has transmitted through the sample material, then we have transmission electron microscopy and electron energy loss spectroscopy. Similarly, if we focus on the electrons which are absorbed inside the semiconductor, like which is shown here, then we have absorption spectroscopy and we have one technique, electron beam induced current. So this technique also gives us lot of information about the sample surface, and emission is also a very important property. So in this emission process we consider the electrons which have emitted, which are known as Auger electrons. So those are electrons which are emitted from the sample surface when the sample surface is hit by electron beam. So in today's lecture our focus will be to discuss in more detail about this Auger electron spectroscopy, right. So now from where this Auger electron comes out. So for example, you see here when a solid sample, for example this is the surface of the solid sample and whole this is that solid sample, and here you see up to this it is all solid, this is top surface, electron beam is falling on the solid surface. So what you can see from here is that this from this small dark portion, this is the region, this is the portion from where the Auger electron is emitted. So if the incoming electron, that is very highly energetic electron, and if it is able to reach to the interior part like 5 to 50 nanometer depth or more than 50 nanometer depth, then it is possible that it will produce secondary electron or backscattered electron, but these electrons they are used in scanning electron microscope. So that is also a very useful technique for characterization of the solid surfaces. But in today's discussion our focus is on those electrons which comes out from the small portion, and this is very small thickness or top few monolayers of the sample surface which produces Auger electrons, and we use these Auger electrons to study about the properties or composition of the surface of the material. So if you talk about Auger electrons, these Auger electrons they escape from a very shallow surface layer, right, very shallow. And how shallow you can see from here. Now if the sample is a metal sample, then the shortest escape depth is possible, right. If it is semiconductor or insulator, then they may have a little higher depth, but in any case the basic Auger technique samples a depth of typically 0.5 to 5 nanometer, right. So 5 nanometer, even if we consider this highest range 5 nanometer, this is a few monolayer, maybe 2, 3, 4 monolayers, not more than this. So the Auger signal is generating from very top layer of the sample surface, and the energy have to be monitored carefully, and we have to detect these electrons and we have to detect the energy of these electrons, and from that energy value we can identify what kind of element is present on the top layer of the sample. Now let's discuss in more detail what is this Auger electron spectroscopy and what is its working principle. Now this Auger electron spectroscopy is widely used technique to investigate, to investigate the composition of surface of solids. So if you have a solid sample, so we can characterize its surface to find out its composition, means what kind of element is present at the surface, that we can identify very easily with the help of this very sophisticated characterization tool. And this technique was discovered by a scientist whose name is Auger, and this discovery was done in 1925. So you can see it's pronounced as Auger, right? So it's a useful technique. Now we will see what is its working principle. So you know that any solid is made of atoms, and here you see I have shown you one atom. Here at the center there is a nucleus, and then there are orbits and electrons are moving around this nucleus in these orbits. So the orbits are normally named as K, L, M, N. So here the atom which we have taken as an example is some atom having a large atomic number, because only in case of large atomic number it's possible that we have K, L, M, N, these four orbits, and all orbits are completely filled orbits. In many atoms in having a low atomic number, we have only K or L or even M shell, these are present here. So depending on the atomic number, the distribution of electrons is there, and what happens, so if a incident electron having energy 3 to 5 kilo electron volt, so this incident electron, so you can assume that this is the incident electron here. If this incident electron, it strikes this atom and it knocks out one electron from K shell. So this is K shell, and from here this incident energetic electron knock out one electron from this shell. So this electron has been knocked out from the cell. So what we will get? We will get a vacancy here in the K shell. Now in order to fill this vacancy which is there in the K shell, another electron which is at higher orbit, so that will shift to this lower orbit. So the electron, if it is moving from L orbit to K orbit, so L orbit have higher energy, K orbit have less energy, so a energy will come out of the system, and the amount of this energy is EL minus EK. EL is the energy of electrons in L orbit, and EK is the energy in this lower orbit. So this much energy will come out of the system if this transition from L shell to K shell takes place. So the L shell electrons falls into the vacancy. So this energy which comes out during this transition, this energy is very helpful, and this energy removes another electron from the L shell, right. So one electron from L shell has gone to the lower K level to fill this vacancy, but during this transition this much energy has come out, and this energy is being used to eject one electron from the L shell. So some part of this energy will be used to provide the bonding energy to this L shell electron, and remaining energy will be used as a kinetic energy of this electron, and with that energy this L shell electron is ejected out. This electron which comes out, is known as Auger electron, right. Now this is the case of a single atom, but you know that in case of solids we don't work with the individual atoms, we have a collection of atoms, and because of that the entire thing is represented in the form of Venn diagrams. Now let us consider the case of a solid material here. So the example which is taken is for silicon sample. So here you can see this is the conduction band, right here, and this is the valence band, and below the valence band there are L levels, and there is one K level. So L level is split into two parts, EL1 and EL23. So what happens when a primary electron, which is high energy electron, which is the energy is mentioned here 3 to 5 kilo electron volt. So when a electron with this much energy hit the solid surface, so it will eject one electron from the K shell. So this electron has been knocked out from the K shell, and here we have got this vacancy. Now in order to fill this vacancy, another electron from a higher level, for example here in this case from EL1 level, that electron have gone down to K level. So the energy which has emitted because of this transition from higher level to low level is EL1 minus EK. So this much energy has came out in this transition, and this energy is used to eject another electron from L level itself. So the electron from L level, this L2 level, so that electron will acquire this entire energy. So some part of this energy is used to remove this electron from this level, or you can say to break the bond, and the remaining part of this energy is the energy of this electron. The electron possesses this kinetic energy which is supplied by this difference itself, right. So some part of this difference energy is used to break the bond, and remaining part of this energy is the kinetic energy of this ejected electron, and this ejected electron is actually your Auger electron, right. And the transition which have occurred here, that involves this K shell and L shell. So that is why this transition is named as KL1 L2 3. So because it involves these shells, it involves K shell, it involves L1 shell, and it involves the second L shell which is L2 3, right. So that is why this transition is named as KLL transition. And the energy with which this Auger electron has gone out, so in case of the silicon, this energy is about 92 electron volt, and this energy is the characteristic feature of silicon, means when the Auger electrons comes out of silicon, it will always have this much energy. Now depending upon the atomic number of the material, we have a certain kind of transition, electron transition takes place here when a high energy electron hits this material, and depending upon that transition we can see how much is the energy of the emitted ejected electron, right. Now, so as I told you, what kind of transition takes place, that depends on the atomic number of the element. Now if the atomic number of element is between 3 to 14, in that case the KLL transition occurs. So this is the similar example which we have discussed just now. In case of silicon, you can see the atomic number falls within this range, so the KLL transition occurs. Now if the atomic number falls between 14 to 40, then LMM transitions occurs. So in case of silicon, M levels are not shown because they do not exist there, but in the atoms whose atomic number lies in this range, the M level also exists, and the transition occurs is the LMM transition, because L level and M levels are involved in the transition. In the same way, if the atomic number of the element lies between 40 to 82, then the transition which occurs is MNN. K shell and L shells are not involved in the transition, rather M shell and N shells, which are higher shells, they are involved in the transition. So you can see that depending upon the atomic number of the element, we have different kind of transitions, and so we have different amount of Auger electron energy. So this is also very important information regarding the transitions. So if the transition is between valence shell and K shell, then the transition is known as KVV transition, and if the transition is between valence band and L level, then the transition is known as LVV transition. And you can see that in case of silicon, it's always like valence band and L level transition, so we call it LVV transition. So in case of silicon, the dominant transition is the LVV transition. So now you understand the transitions which occurs into the solid material when it is hit by the high energy primary electron. And you also have seen that at least 3 electrons are involved in this transition. So one electron is the electron which has been ejected, or it has been knocked out from the K shell. Second electron is the electron which has transferred from L level to K level in order to fill this vacancy, and third electron is the electron which is actually the Auger electron, and which in this present case was at L to 3 level, and which has gone out of the atom, which has ejected out of the atom or the material, right. So 3 electrons are necessary for this entire phenomena to take place. So because of this reason, this technique cannot identify the elements where the number of electrons are less than 3. So for example, hydrogen and helium, they have electrons less than 3. Hydrogen have 1 and helium have 2. So we cannot identify hydrogen and helium present onto the sample surface using this technique. Even they are present, this technique cannot detect hydrogen and helium. Now once you detect the electrons Auger electrons coming out of the surface, then we have to analyze the energy of these electrons. So here you can see the energy or the electron yield of the Auger electrons is plotted as a function of electron energy. Now you can see that in case of Auger electrons, if we see, the energy lies mostly between 30 electron volt to 3000 electron volt. You can see here the maximum energy is 3000 electron volt, and you have seen in case of scanning electron microscope that the backscattered electrons have energy near about 3 kilo electron volt, or you can say 3000 electron volt, and secondary electrons which are also part of scanning electron microscope SEM, so they have energy of few electron volt. So here within this range from here to here, you see, from here to here in entire range, the electrons which are coming out are Auger electrons, and their energy is from 30 to 3000 electron volt or 3 kilo electron volt. In case of silicon, I told you that LVV transitions dominate. So the energy which comes out, or the Auger electron energy, that is nearly 92 electron volts. So you can see here this small peak that corresponds to the LVV transition in case of silicon, and this energy is about 92 electron volt, right. So somewhere here. Now the energy of Auger electron is characteristic feature of the element from which it is coming out. For example, in case of silicon, this energy is 92 electron volt, and if it is some other element, then the Auger electron energy will be different from this. So what we have to do, we have to look at this spectrum, we have to see the peaks, and we have to identify the energy of peaks, and from that energy we can identify the element which is present there, because that element is ejecting the Auger electrons with this specific energy. Now you know the basic working principle of Auger electron spectroscopy. Now we will see what kind of instrumentation is involved there, or means how we what kind of things we can bring together to implement the Auger electron spectroscopy. Now Auger electron spectroscopy consists of these things. Number one very important thing is UHV, ultra high vacuum. So you know it is E-beam technique. So first we have to generate an electron beam. The electron beam should reach to the sample surface. At the sample surface after interaction, Auger electrons will come out, and these Auger electrons also have to be transported to the detector so that we can detect them easily. So because of the movement of smooth electrons have to be ensured, so all this process has to be carried out in ultra high vacuum environment, so that the movement of electrons is not disturbed, that movement should be smooth. we also have to avoid the presence of contamination in this whole process at the sample surface in order to improve the accuracy. So because of this, the ultra high vacuum environment is necessary for the implementation of Auger electron spectroscopy, and the vacuum is of the order of 10 to power minus 9 torr, something like this. Then we should have an electron gun, because we have to generate electron, and that electron should move in the form of a beam. So that beam control is also necessary. So the diameter of beam should be as small as possible. Most of the time it is 100 micrometer, but 10 nanometer diameter of diameter beam is also possible if we use field emission source for the electrons, right. So both these possibilities exist, 10 nanometer in case of field emission source, otherwise we can have 100 micrometer, that is possible. Now the next important thing which should be the part of this equipment is electron energy analyzer. So because I told you that the Auger energy which is coming out, that we have to identify, we have to measure accurately, because that energy is the identification of the atom or the material which is present there. So that energy analyzer, that should be there, and then finally we have to detect those Auger electrons. So for detection of Auger electrons we have three different possibilities. The retarding potential analyzer can be used, a cylindrical mirror analyzer can be used, or a hemispherical analyzer can be used. In today's lecture we will see the working of this cylindrical mirror analyzer, because that is a very popular analyzer which is used in the detection of electrons in case of Auger electron spectroscopy. Finally we have data analysis electrons, means whatever data is generated there, that has to be plotted, that have to be analyzed in order to get the useful results. Here in this figure you can see this is one typical Auger electron spectroscopy instrument lying in some laboratory. Now we will see the functioning of the cylindrical mirror analyzer, CME. This is cylindrical mirror analyzer. So it is used to analyze the energy, analyze and detect the energy. So it is commonly used electron energy detector in case of Auger electron spectroscopy. So here what happens, the Auger electrons, so this is the sample which we are planning to characterize. So the incident electrons, they are coming from this side, they are interacting with the sample surface, and because of this interaction Auger electrons will generate. The Auger electrons you can see here, they are entering into this portion. What it is a cylinder. Actually there are two cylinders of different diameter, and they are concentric cylinder. Concentric cylinder means their axial line falls on the same imaginary line, right. So one cylinder is having this surface, right, and the second cylinder have this here, this part is the second cylinder, and this is the first cylinder. So I am marking it with this green color, this is first cylinder and this is second cylinder, but they are concentric. So one wall of this first cylinder is here, second here, and in case of the second cylinder one portion here and the second portion here, right, and you can see the center of these two cylinders lies here on this imaginary line, right. Now when this incident light or incident electrons, they are falling on the sample surface, Auger electrons will come out of it, and these Auger electrons will enter into this portion through this narrow opening, right. Now here in this cylinder you see there is a rod, there is a plate here, and this plate is connected to a high potential, and because of this there is a electric field here in this portion of the cylinder. Now this electric field will apply some energy to this entering Auger electrons, and because of this electric field energy, this entering Auger electron will follow a certain trajectory, and then from the other end of this trajectory it will come out, right. Now this CMA, this design allows electrons with a specific energy and with a specific energy spread to pass through the exit slit. So only those electrons which have a specific energy, they will be able to come out of this slit. Other electrons will follow other energy electrons will follow different trajectories, so they may hit after this exit or before the exit. Only a certain energy electrons depending on this VA will be able to exit through this slit. So that way the electrons with that specific energy band is selected and they only are allowed to fall on the detector, or you can see here it is first a electron multiplier, right. Now the resolution of this system is delta E by E. Delta E is spread in the energy and E is the energy of the Auger electrons. Now the spectrum, if we talk about the spectrum of the Auger electron, basically it's the energy, so that is plotted something like this. Here you see this is the case of a silicon LVV transition. So suppose we are characterizing a silicon material, or we are trying to identify silicon atoms present on the solid surface, and we know that in case of silicon this transition is LVV transition, and LVV transition this is 92 electron volt. This is the energy of the Auger electrons, right. So here you can see this upper red, this curve, this curve. So this curve you see here, the y-axis is N E is the yield of the electrons and E is the energy. So what is plotted here on the x-axis is energy into yield of the electrons. So if we see this curve here, this arrow indicates that for this curve this y scale we have to consider. Now you see here there is a spread of energy. So there is one peak here, that peak of course is nearly 90, but it's only not that 92 electron volt energy is there. There is a spread of energy, right. So this portion, it's just all this spread is visible here. So now why this kind of spread is there? Actually this Auger electron peak that appears, this Auger electron peak appears as small perturbation on a high background, right. So this Auger electron is appearing on a high background. So this background energy we have to filter out, and from where this background energy is coming, you know that for example backscattered electrons which are coming out when a high energy electron beam strike the sample surface. So the backscattered energy is higher energy as compared to Auger electrons, but the backscattered electron may have lost their energy when they were passing through the material, and because of that their energy may also lie in the range of Auger electrons. So now it becomes very difficult to identify whether the electrons having this particular energy, they are Auger electrons or they are backscattered electrons. So for that purpose a mathematical skill is applied. So what we do, we differentiate the Auger signal, right. So Auger signal you see the energy E multiplied by NE means yield of electron multiplied by the energy of electron. So that whole part is differentiated with respect to E. So when this differentiation is done, we get this kind of peak, the lower peak, right, this peak, right, this lower signal, and for this lower signal scale is here on the right hand side. So this is differentiated signal and this was original signal. Now you can see that in case of differentiated signal, this peak occurs at the 92 electron volt. This is more sharp peak. So it means if we have a differentiated signal, then it becomes more easy to identify the peak corresponding to Auger signal. So this differentiation actually enhances the signal to background ratio. So your background is suppressed and your main signal is enhanced, and if you differentiate it, and from this curve you can see that it's more easy to locate the energy of this peak, and it's about 92 electron volt something this, right, and so we can easily identify that this peak corresponds to the presence of silicon. This is another example. So three different kind of signals are plotted here, and the signal is actually the differentiated signal, right? Because with the help of differentiated signal we can improve the signal to background ratio. Now here you can see at 92 electron volt there is a negative peak, because it's the silicon substrate, and in this red curve you can see it's the interface of silicon and SiO2. So there is peak at 92 electron volt because we are at the interface. Silicon is of course also present there, and SiO2 is also there. So corresponding to SiO2 and different elements may be present there. So there are multiple peaks here, and this blue curve is for SiO2 surface only, no silicon is there. So you can see that whatever peaks were there corresponding to SiO2, they are more enhanced here, right. So that way from this energy spectrum we can locate a dominating peak, and we can see how much is energy of that dominating peak, and depending on that energy we can identify the element, and that way we can do the compositional analysis of the solid surfaces. Now if you talk about the advantages of Auger electron spectroscopy technique, so first thing is this technique is surface sensitive technique, it is highly sensitive technique, and it is non-destructive technique, right. The sample is not damaged. And the another advantage is that elemental and chemical composition analysis can also be done very easily, and for that purpose what we do the comparison with standard samples of known composition. So first we should have standard samples where we know the composition. So we do the Auger electron spectroscopy analysis on those samples. We have spectrum with us. Now this spectrum will act as a standard. So now we will go to the unknown samples, we will obtain its spectrum, we will compare that spectrum with these standard samples, right, and that way we can identify what kind of element or what kind of chemicals are present there on the sample surface. Now detection of elements heavier than lithium, it is very good sensitivity for lighter elements. So the wide range of elements can be identified, we can summarize it like this. Now depth profiling is also possible. Now quantitative compositional information as a function of depth below the surface. So I told you this is a surface sensitive technique. So we can get signal from a few monolayers on the top sample surface. But if we want to do the depth analysis, what we have to do? We have to remove very thin portion from the top. We do the Auger analysis, we get the data. Then again we remove a known thickness from the top, and then we repeat the Auger analysis, and that way we can keep on moving vertically down. So depth profiling is also possible. Now spatial distribution of elements can also be obtained, means if we have a sample here, on the sample we can repeat this measurement at different location. This is location A, this is location B, this is location C. So at different location we can carry out this analysis, and we can find out what kind of elements are present at location A, location B, location C. So this is spatial distribution of elements at different spatial locations. We can identify, or we can find out the composition of the sample surface. If you talk about the limitations, so this technique can analyze conducting and semiconducting surfaces, and special procedures are required for non-conducting samples. So if it is a conducting sample or semiconducting sample, there is no problem, but if it is a non-conducting sample we have to make special arrangements. Why? Because if it is a non-conducting surface, for example if it is a SiO2 surface, then if we fall electron beam on this SiO2 surface, if electrons falls here, right, what will happen? So this is non-conducting surface. Once this electron reach here, it will stay here, and that way slowly the entire surface will be charged, and the charge which is present now, that will interfere with the further analysis step. So if we want to do the characterization of this kind of non-conducting surface, then we sometimes do some special procedures so that we can get accurate results from the non-conducting samples also. Now only solid specimens can be analyzed using these techniques. It's not possible to do this Auger analysis on the liquid samples or other kind of samples. Now if the sample decomposes under electron beam irradiation, then we cannot do this kind of analysis. Now hydrogen and helium are not detectable because they have less than 3 electrons. I told you that the entire process of Auger phenomena that involves 3 electrons, at least 3 electrons present into the atom, but in case of hydrogen and helium the number of electrons are less than 3, so we cannot detect hydrogen and helium. The sampling, but if we want to increase the sampling depth, then we have to remove the top layer and we have to repeat the analysis and remove the top layer, so that way we can go to the deeper part of the samples. So thank you very much. So I hope that now the concept of Auger electron spectroscopy is clear to you. If you have any doubt, any question, you can contact me and you can ask me during the interaction sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you.